everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Retrograde right here on Dead Jester Cinema. Once again, if you're not familiar with the Retrograde, it's where I go through an old movie and then I break that movie down into 4 gradable categories: story, characters, direction, and music. And when it's all done, I combine all those grades into one cumulative grade for the entire film. And on this edition of the Retrograde, we're going to go back to the sequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which for years in the context of the original trilogy was always considered the worst out of that original trilogy. But is it really that bad? Well, let's just dive right in and see what we got. So the film opens up on a musical number? Yeah, it is a bit odd that your big action-adventure spectacle opens on a Rodgers and Hammerstein looking production, but Spielberg has always said that he wanted to do a musical around this time, so I guess this was kind of his way of doing that. Alrighty, now the film officially begins in Shanghai in 1935, making this entry a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark. And it's here where we are also introduced to Indiana Jones doing his best 007 impression. Spielberg will tell you all day long that that is an homage to Humphrey Bogart from Casablanca, but let's be honest, it's James Bond. It's here where we are also formally introduced to Willie Scott, Indy's main love interest in this film, and she is annoying as fuck. So moving on, Indy engages in some hostile bartering with the mobster goon Lao She, but after Mr. She properly pays up, Indy delivers him the cremated remains of an ancient emperor he was paid to find. But upon celebrating that transaction, Indy is informed his drink was laced with poison, and in order to get the antidote, Indy has to return what he paid to Lao She. And this kicks off all sorts of Three Stooges level calamity, as Dr. Jones tries to get the antidote while fighting off Lao She's goon squad, as Willie also tries to recover the diamond that was payment to Lao She. But while she is unsuccessful in her original plan, she does stumble across the antidote, which is being kicked around the dance floor. So Indy finds her, and the two escape by jumping out the window, through some awnings, and into the waiting car driven by Indy's child sidekick, Short Round, who speeds the two off while also dodging more of Lao She's men. Meanwhile, Indy does get the antidote, and the company arrives at the airport to make their escape. Or not. This whole opening is fun as hell. Now, probably not as good or even on the same level as Raiders. It's probably just a couple notches below, but it is still a fun way to kick off your action-adventure film. But the thrills aren't over because Jones and company aren't completely out of the woods yet, as the two pilots dump the plane's fuel and then peace out, leaving Jones, Short Round, and Annoying Woman plummeting to Earth. So in a last-ditch effort, Indy grabs a raft and his two companions and jumps from the aircraft while... okay... Alright, I know, you have to have a lot of suspension of disbelief in these movies in order to have scenes like this work and make sense. And this isn't even as bad as this series does get. But seriously, come on. And it happens twice in the same sequence. I mean, the odds of surviving one, if not both of those, are probably about the same amount of odds as surviving a nuclear blast inside a refrigerator. Anyways, the trio wash up on the banks of the river and run into this very old man who takes them to his village, where he explains to them that evil people from Minecart Palace invaded their village and stole their sacred Sankara stone, causing everything in said village to wither and die. But not only that, they also stole and enslaved their children, and through the power of prayer, he believes Indiana Jones was brought to them to help them get back the stone and the children. And the enslaved children is the first of many subtext or subplots within this movie that really give it a darker tone than Raiders. Plus, it's intertwined with the whole Sankara stone plot to this story, and it just feels like a power struggle of importance between those two plot points. So the next day, Indy and his companions set out for Minecart Palace, and on the way, Willie further demonstrates why she is arguably the most annoying character in the franchise.
with her is the noise.
Now I get she's supposed to be the antithesis to Marion Ravenwood, who is a very self-sufficient woman, whereas Willie Scott is the stereotypical damsel in distress, but holy shit, is it pushed way too far. Like, it goes beyond the point of being funny or comic relief and straight to being cringe and, like I said before, annoying.
The next morning, while on their travels, Indy finds shrines with severed human body parts acting as a warning, to which their guide takes heed of and just decides to dip out, leaving Indiana Jones and crew on their own, and they have to walk the rest of the way to Minecart Palace. And upon arriving at said palace, they are greeted by the Prime Minister to the Maharaja, and he welcomes them inside to rest. So as night falls, Indy and company are invited to dinner by the Maharaja, where Dr. Jones engages the Prime Minister about local history of the Thuggee cult, and that the village he was just at claimed that that same evil was once again spreading throughout the land. The Prime Minister more or less shrugs it off and tells Indy that those villagers are just full of shit. And oh yeah, how could I simply forget and gloss over this whole amazing dinner scene?
This scene is so dark, but also borderline offensive, but it's still fun and it's still gross. And yeah, a scene like this probably couldn't be made today. But in the context of the story, it's purposely meant to be off-putting because obviously no one really eats this stuff like that. It's all foreshadowing the evil and the darkness that is present within this palace, but it's also meant just as a gag. So I guess what I'm saying is, for everybody that just gets on their white horse and tries to white knight this scene and make it more than it really is, just lighten up a little bit.
So later on, Indy brings Willie a little late night snack, and also some fruit, but before the two get down to bumpin' uglies, they engage in a little hard-to-get foreplay. And when Indy retreats to his room, he's just suddenly attacked by this guy who just creeps out from this painting behind him. But Indy's got pressing matters to attend to, so he leaves homie hanging. Jones then barges back into Willie's room looking for any more would-be attackers, but what he stumbles upon is a secret passage. So you know what that means. Grab the whip, grab the fedora, it's exploring time. And while exploring that hidden passage, Indy and Short Round stumble upon a good old-fashioned death trap, complete with spikes. And with no way out, it's up to Willie to rescue them. But first, she's got to traverse through one of the most disgusting rooms ever imagined.
Now, I'm not usually that squeamish when it comes to bug and insects. I mean, at least not ones that are outside of my own personal space. But this scene in this room is all sorts of hell no. Like, I'll take the crypt and all that scary shit from Raiders of the Lost Ark over this room.
We are going to die!
Willie eventually toughs her way through that nightmare fuel and saves Indy and Short Round from their impending deaths, but not before she freaks out and accidentally resets the trap, but this time the trio make it out alive, but barely.
And this is where I'll admit that Willie, being a scaredy cat and being that stereotypical damsel in distress, has its payoff, because this whole death trap sequence and scene is a lot of fun.
Now, upon surviving that spiky room of death, Indy and company stumble upon the titular Temple of Doom and a Thuggee ritual, which is being orchestrated by the film's chief villain, the evil Mola Ram, who appears to have that little child Maharaja under some kind of spell. And obviously, what ritual wouldn't be complete without a good old-fashioned sacrifice, in which Mola Ram rips this poor bastard's heart out and then sends him down into a fiery pit of death.
Mola Ram wins. Fatality.
This whole Temple of Doom has some of the best production design I have ever seen, and it's one of my all-time favorite movie sets.
It's here that Indy sees that Mola Ram and the Thuggee are indeed in possession of the Sankara stones, and when the ritual is over, he game platforms his way down into the temple to retrieve those stones. But on his way out, he hears the screams of children being tortured. Yeah, you almost forgot about those kids, didn't you, Indy? Anyway, Indy goes to investigate, leaving Willie and Short Round alone, and Jesus Christ! So not only do they get captured, but after discovering the stolen and enslaved children from the village and alerting the Thuggy to his presence, so does Indy. And while captive, one of the prisoners tells him that they'll make him drink the blood of Kali, which will put Indy under a sort of hypnosis and make him evil just like all the others.
We'll be alive, but like a nightmare. You drink blood, you not wake up from nightmare.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on. Right decade, but wrong franchise and wrong nightmare.
Later, in a very Bond villain-esque scene, Mola Ram explains his whole plot of conquest to Indiana, who more or less just laughs in his face about it. And since Mola Ram gets so butthurt over that, he has Indy beaten and tortured with voodoo witchcraft, and though Indy puts forth a valiant effort, he is too exhausted from all that torturing and is forced to drink and swallow the blood of Kali, to which Indy is now more or less possessed by its dark magic.
Once again, just another example of this film going a little bit darker than it probably needed to. I mean, not only is a child and other children tortured, but so is our hero, and then he's turned evil. Now George Lucas himself has come out and said the darker tones of this movie are attributed to the fact that he was in a dark place at that point in time when writing it because he was going through a divorce, to which all I have to say is, that must have been one hell of a divorce.
Anyways, Short Round is temporarily put to work before he breaks out and heads off to save his companions. Meanwhile, Indiana Jones is fully in the grip of the dark side as Mola Ram puts him in charge of sacrificing Willie into that pit of fire. And Indy obviously seems kinda down with that right now.
I mean, she is annoying as fuck, so is it really that much of a loss?
But before Willie gets turned into a well-done piece of shoe leather, Short Round interferes, trying to stop Indy and snap him out of it. But Indy LAPDs his ass and seems very happy with himself about it. But that's when Shorty grabs a torch and burns Indy, which breaks the spell he was under?
Okay, so... How... Okay, so... How did he know to do that? Because that is one hell of a lucky guess. I mean, that does seem like an important detail, Steven, that you just kind of left out here. Just saying.
That's when Indy turns back into the hero we all know and love and starts whooping everybody's ass, including the Prime Minister who tries to take a page from Julius Caesar, but Indy puts a stop to that and is like, "Can you catch these hands, please?" "Okay, thanks." But before he can get to Mola Ram, that little asshole pulls a Phantom of the Opera and dips out through a trap door. So instead of going after him right away, he decides to save Willie from that lava pit instead.
Damn it, Ron, you beat me to it.
After freeing Willie and taking back possession of the stones, Indy then sets out to free all the enslaved children, and when he does, we are treated to this very badass shot of Harrison.
This shot combined with John Williams' music is just a thing of beauty.
So while springing all the children from their cult labor camp, Indy gets into a brawl with Thugosaurus Rex here, and nearly hands him his ass. But that little possessed Maharaja prick uses his voodoo magic on Jones, nearly getting him pulverized by a rock crusher. But thanks to Short Round running interference yet again, he not only saves Jones by breaking the voodoo spell, but he also saves the Maharaja by burning the hypnosis away on him as well. And it's there where Thugosaurus Rex gets ground into a pulp and Indy and company make their escape in one of the coolest action sequences.
And what makes this whole thing cool is not only just the aesthetic of the minecart shaft and the chase itself, because it looks like one hellacious amusement park ride, but the model and miniature work is just impeccably clean. Like, for years, I thought that this was all shot on a real set. I didn't know that this was all actually miniatures and models and clay, and then it was all stop motion. And if you didn't know that before tuning into this, now you know. Now, like, go back and look at this scene and look at the whole sequence. And, I mean, if you go frame by frame, you could see it, but it is just incredible when you watch it, how seamlessly it blends with the live action.
So after that insane and epic minecart chase, Mola Ram is done playing around and decides to flood the place in an effort to kill Indiana Jones. But Jones and crew barely end up making it out, and when Indiana gets to the top of the other side of the ledge, two guys with swords appear, and an epic showdown commences, and...
Actually, I do really like this callback to not only Raiders of the Lost Ark, but it's a callback to earlier in the film when Willie hot potatoed Indy's gun out of the car.
And actually, this time, a real fight does break out. But when Indy thinks he's got the upper hand, as his ass gets swatted by a shit ton of thuggy goons who chase him across the bridge. But on the other side, as Willie and Short Round cross, Mola Ram appears like an RKO out of nowhere, trapping our heroes. Indy threatens to drop the Sankara stones in the alligator-infested river below, but Mola Ram is like, bitch please, and orders his men to attack. That's when Indy threatens to cut the bridge down, but Mola Ram forces Willie and Shorty back onto the bridge in an attempt to call Indy's bluff. But, like usual, once again, Jones isn't playing around.
Prepare to meet Kali in hell. Oh, what are you doing?
This little bit always made me laugh because what the shit do you think he's doing? I mean, you're the one who put him in that position. Do you think he's just gonna kind of roll over and just let you waltz out there and take the stones? No. And did you honestly think after everything else that he wasn't going to go this far?
So Indy cuts the bridge, sending a lot of thuggy snacks down to the gators below. And while climbing up the side, Indy and Mola Ram have one last showdown, where Indy's heart is almost ripped out until it's not, and the two fight over the Sankara stones in Indy's satchel. But Indy, knowing shit because he knows shit, tells Mola Ram he's betrayed Shiva, and he starts enchanting some sort of ritualistic spell, and the stones start burning through the bag and falling into the river below. But when Mola Ram reaches to grab the last one before it falls, the intense heat burns his hand, causing him to lose his grip and fall to his death. Death roll! Indy scales the collapsed bridge to show off that he's still in possession of the last remaining stone, and the film ends with the trio returning said stone to the village and also returning all the children to their parents. So yay, all's well that ends well.
And that is it for Temple of Doom. Now, let's kick this thing over to the grading scale and let's grade this bitch.
The story gets a B. It's a solid story, but one that often drifts a little too macabre and dark. And it's also a story that just doesn't hit the same highs as Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now don't get me wrong, it's still a fun ride, but I mean, it is just a few notches below Raiders of the Lost Ark in my opinion. The direction gets an A+. I mean, once again, Spielberg is in top form. Although this time I feel like he upped his game coming off of Raiders of the Lost Ark, as his work here on Temple of Doom I consider to be his best in the franchise. I think that darker tone of the story allowed him and cinematographer Douglas Slocum to explore more creative uses of shadows and lighting, especially once we get to the Temple of Doom itself. The movie is just beautiful eye candy. The characters get a B-. With all the high praise I just gave the direction, now comes what I feel is the weakest link of this film, the characters. Now let me be clear, just because I say the characters are the weakest attribute of this film, doesn't mean I think they're all bad. A B- obviously is still a high passing grade. However, I just don't feel like they have the same depth to them like the ones from Raiders of the Lost Ark had. Harrison is once again fantastic, nothing negative to say there, and Mola Ram is an exceptionally evil villain, if albeit a little too caricaturish and two-dimensional in that regard. Short Round is great and a welcome fun addition to the franchise, but the two drawbacks are the rest of the supporting cast who don't really do enough to stand out, and Willie Scott. In an era of strong, independent females who must always match their male star in every attribute, it is kind of refreshing to see a cliched damsel in distress. However, the damsel in distress parts are turned up to almost annoying levels, and in my opinion, Willie kind of becomes a detriment to what is actually a very fun movie. The music gets an A. I mean, spoiler, John Williams once again smashes it in the musical department. But I'm gonna give his Temple of Doom score just a step or two lower grade than Raiders. Standout tracks on this being Short Round's theme and the Temple of Doom theme, and the Slave Children's Crusade. The rest of the score, while great, just doesn't consistently hit the peaks of these three tracks in my opinion. Once again, we're dealing with Indiana Jones, so bonus points are going to be awarded for the Sankara stones, which get a B. It's not a bad MacGuffin, but one that just doesn't pack the same gravitas as something like the Ark of the Covenant. And maybe that's my own ignorance, but oh well. Plus, I don't feel like there was enough time spent building them up, and their importance almost becomes secondary to the story. But with all those grades combined, the film sits at an 88.8% rating, which means that Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom gets the grade of a B+. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is a fun ride, and I mean that both figuratively and literally, as the film really does feel like a non-stop amusement park ride, featuring arguably what I consider Spielberg's best work of the franchise. Harrison is once again in top form, as always, but where this film comes up short is in the supporting cast, namely the female lead, and also the story, which pushes a little too dark at times, as well as the tug-of-war of importance between the Sankara stones and the enslaved children. And I don't feel like proper time is given to one or the other, and the film does its best to juggle both in that spotlight. But despite its shortcomings, Temple of Doom is a great Sunday afternoon flick that might be a little light on story, but it's heavy on action and thrills.
Alright everybody, that was my retrograde episode to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. An entry that isn't quite as good as Raiders of the Lost Ark, but it's an entry that I think still holds the mantle of an Indiana Jones movie very, very well. What are your guys' thoughts on Temple of Doom? Did I grade it fairly? Please post your own grades below, and let's talk about Indiana Jones. Anyways, like, comment, and subscribe. Adios. Now, GTFO!